Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a good friend of mine here today on the podcast, and welcome back to the podcast. Someone I've known for it's 5 or 6 years.
It's about 6 years.
It's been, and something I'm really grateful for is to meet amazing people on the way, but people that are following their passion, following their calling, taking action, making mistakes, putting out fires like we were talking about before we jumped on this podcast. Mele, movement coach, movement specialist, empowering transformation, strong suits you. I like that. I like that a lot. But a good friend of mine, and Zen, firstly, thank you for being here today. I really do appreciate it, man.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
There's so many ways I want to chat with you. There's so many things that I align with you, what you stand for, even what you were talking about before we jumped on, the balance between the hustle, but I don't know what you'd call the opposite, the relaxation or the fulfillment side of things as well, which I think a lot of people, especially with I guess the hustle world and seeing people on social media making all this money and starting businesses and doing XYZ, they get really caught up with that. But before we dive into that, share me your story. I know you've got a powerful story, so share with your story. Take that wherever you want, man, and I'd love to get a refresher.
Sweet. I'll give you the short version because we could be here for the whole 60 minutes.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, I grew up in the back of the Gold Coast in a place called Numbaba Valley, and I spent a lot of my life there.
Epic.
And people have often driven through it but never been there.
Yeah, epic.
And so I spent a real solid amount of time as a kid growing up there, and it really, for me, that's where creativity just kind of birthed in that space. I spent a lot of time by myself. It was me, my motorbike, and 100 acres of land for a very long time.
That's awesome.
And I didn't have a lot of people to communicate with and be social with, so I sought other devices or vices for creativity and for education, all those kinds of things. It was crazy. But fast forward, lived there for about 10 years of my life, and then we move out and into more suburbia. I start going to a state school. I graduate high school, all that kind of stuff. And fast forward to 15 years old, and some real radical things started happening in my life. And for me, I've always been surrounded by business. I've always been surrounded by incredible influences in those industries, like in the business industry, people working for themselves. I've always had, like, my dad has been an absolute inspiration to me.
Awesome.
And coming from growing up with him, building a business out somewhere rural, like being some of the first people to jump online and start doing some crazy things on the Gold Coast, was incredible to witness. So for me, I always had an influence in that area. Awesome. So come to 15, I had this conversation, and we ended up moving out to suburbia, like I said, and my parents sat me down one day, and they said, Zen, so you realize that there's been a bit of tension in our family, but it's time for you to move out.
Wow.
And I was like, I couldn't comprehend it as a 15-year-old. I look at my brother now and I'm like, wow, you look so young. Yeah. I cannot imagine you moving out.
That's when you did it, right? Because he's 15, right?
Yeah, he's 15. It's a real full circle. It's been like a 10-year experience, or a bit longer than that. And to see him hit 15, then be like, wow, to watch you at your age and think that was what I went through. Anyway, it was all for good reason. My family was going through a very stressful time at that stage. And so they gave me 2 weeks notice. It was like getting evicted from a house, literally. And I was like, okay, sweet. So I went.
What was going through your head, man? That's like, for a 15-year-old, that was can't be easy. So what was going on through the head in that process?
To be completely honest, like from 15 to 17, it's pretty hazy. Like I probably need to do a bit of timeline stuff around that time, because it was pretty intense. But what I do remember really clearly is just, it's almost like that numb feeling. It was like I went directly into survival mode. Yeah. And I'd lived out in the middle of nowhere for a long time, so I knew how to look after myself. And my parents raised me in that way, which is just great. Otherwise, I don't think they would have made that decision. So they had some sort of confidence that I couldn't see in me. And so it was kind of this numbing feeling, but I went straight to survival. And 2 weeks later, I moved out, lived in a garage for the first couple of weeks. And then I pretty much became my own guardian. and which you can. I turned 16 a couple months later, and you can become your own guardian at 16, which I never knew. So every suburb I would move to, I would go and apply for that school wherever I was at. I've lived pretty much everywhere on the Gold Coast, and I've attended anywhere between 5 and 6 high schools from what I can remember.
Yeah.
And so wherever I was living, I applied to that school and I went for it. Anyway, for me, it was such a blessing. I couldn't see it at the time.
Yeah.
It was full survival. It was fight or flight for me. And but the beautiful thing is that I was surrounded by some interesting people at that time. And being in survival and having to live week to week for me in that time actually like kept me from doing things that maybe other 15, 16, 17-year-olds around that time and who I was surrounded by would have maybe fallen into.
What do you mean?
Drugs, alcohol, crime, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was exposed to all three of those things. And luckily, everything was so tight that I couldn't quite make the decision to fall into any three of those things, which is crazy.
When you say like tight, as in, what
it
do
was
you mean
like,
by that?
let's say finances, let's say time, let's say transport. Like, it was all I had room for because I decided to continue putting myself through school.
Yeah. So were you paying your way through school?
I was paying my way through school.
That's amazing, man. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I mean, that was a really cool lesson to be able to commit to that and to continue going. And if I didn't, I think it could have, I don't know. I don't really operate in could haves or would haves, but it was like, it could have really been dark if I didn't have that. So it was like full survival. So I couldn't really think about anything else at the time. And fast forward 2 years, I lived out of home for just a bit over 2 years, and I came back, and there was this one situation where I came back home after 2 days staying with a friend, and the power had went out over those 2 days, so I lost all my food that I had bought, and I had no more money. I was on a strict budget for myself, and I had to be. So I had no more money to get food, and I ended up not eating for 2 days, and it was like I'd never been in that situation before. I couldn't get anywhere, didn't have any money for transport. I spoke to my family maybe once a month, but I never really bothered them too much.
Yeah.
My dad randomly called me up on that second day, and he was like, "You sound different. Are you okay?" Yeah. And I was like, "I'm not okay. Like, something needs to change." So he came and picked me up, and I ended up coming back home for a little bit. And what had happened over those 2 years was my mum had actually fallen sick in the beginning. I never really understood it until I came back home too much. And what I later found out is that she was given 12 weeks to live on that time that they asked me to move out.
Wow.
It was really weird because timeline wise it was strange, but
so they knew that when they asked you to move out?
They knew. Yeah. My mom didn't believe the 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So she was always going to fight it.
Yeah.
She just wasn't sure if she was going to make it past that. But she kind of had this inkling she was going to do everything that she could. And she was still alive, and she ended up surviving. Like I was back home, and obviously she was there, and I heard all these stories, and it was crazy. And she went through all these natural therapies and mainstream therapies, and it was this rare cancer that was really aggressive, and like no one knew what it was. It was a real strange situation for her and for us as a family. And I moved back home, heard all these stories, and I missed a lot of my siblings' lives, my brother and my sister. And then probably a few months later, after I'd moved back home, it was a month before my 18th birthday, exactly on the day, September 11, 2013. And it was a normal day for me, and I came home from school. And I was sitting in the kitchen making food, and my dad comes, my sister screams through the house, and I was like, not screams, like she was just going really fast. I went straight to her room, and I was like, that's strange. My dad came in, and he had this this heaviness I could see in his face. And I was like, what's going on? And he let me know that my mum didn't make it through that day.
Wow.
And she was actually in the room just like 10, 20 meters away from me.
Man, I get emotional just hearing this. I don't know how you're talking right now, but keep going.
Yeah, it was really scary, and I remember just standing there for like an hour straight, just not being able to move or function.
Yeah.
And
So your 18th birthday is when this happened.
a month before my 18th birthday.
Month before.
So yeah, and that was the goal. The goal was for her to make it to my 18th birthday.
Yeah.
And it was because we knew it was kind of going downhill, and it was really full on. And my story speeds up in a moment, but I suppose the life changing moment for me was when my dad said, "Hey, do you want to go sit in the room? And do you want to, the ambulance will be here soon to pick her up. Would you like to go sit with her?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh man, no, I don't think I'm able to do that." And he said, "No, I really strongly recommend you think about this. Take a bit of time, but if you've got a couple of hours and if you want to, you can go sit in there." Anyway, I pulled myself together and I decided to go do it. And it was the most silent experience of my entire life because the whole house was silent and I couldn't hear anyone. Went in this room, closed the doors, and I just sat there in this seat. And that was the moment my life changed forever. I made a decision in there. She had shared her inspiring story with me and what she wanted to do if she survived. Only months before. And I made a decision in there that I was about to go to the Air Force. I was about to do all these things. I'd applied and I was making a shift in this direction. And she shared this amazing, inspiring story with what she wanted to do. She wanted to help young people all over Australia share her journey of what she went through between 12 and 25, which ultimately killed her when she was in 2013. And she wanted to write a book about it and all this kind of stuff. And I sat in that room and I was like, you know what? Scrap everything. I'm going to step into these shoes and I'm going to do it. And I repeated grade 11 shortly after that. After I stepped out of the room and made all these crazy decisions just sitting there with her, it was the most eerie feeling of my entire life. And you can only imagine it you can only know if you've actually been in that situation. It was crazy. And so I made a decision and I repeated grade 11. I decided I was going to do better in school. And so I ended up graduating at 19 years old. I was much older. I was like 2 to 3 years older than all of my peers. Almost had my open license, green peas before I graduated year 12. And I decided I was like, I'm going to give back to the school I'm at. I'm going to start a fitness program. I'm going to start educating myself first and then sharing her story. And so we went on and I started a program called Body Allegiance. And I did that for 8 years. And about 5 years in, I started something called that we called SFX Burley at the time, which you've attended. You've been there. That was where we met. We met through that kind of connection in the industry, I guess.
Yeah.
And you attended our first center, which was 15 meters squared, a reinforced, reinvented kitchen storage unit at the back of a cafe. Yeah. And I'll never forget that morning.
Was that down in Tweed or something, right?
Coolangatta, yeah. And it's 6 years in, we started the Body Co, which is the clothing brand, and then brings us fast forward to 9 years, and we rebranded SFX, and now it's Body Headquarters. And to be honest, that entire journey has been radical, but it started in that room with a desire to educate and change the lives of young people and just educate them on decisions that they make at that age and how impactful and scarring it can be and how it affects them for the rest of their life.
That's a fucking powerful story, man. I haven't heard it in that depth. I didn't know about the school. I didn't know you've funding yourself through school. That's that alone. And just even something that came to mind as you were speaking. I like Grant Cardone. Some people do. I don't like Grant Cardone, but I like parts of him. And I remember it was just like a video I remember I watched, and he was like, I keep myself busy with productive things so I don't fall into bad habits, bad patterns, bad people. So it's like you said, you didn't have the time to do the drugs or the drinking, all of the bad stuff, because you couldn't. Like you were so occupied with just paying bills, doing study, obviously living life, which is amazing, man.
Yeah.
There's so many ways I'd like to take that. I think I'd like to, I guess you mentioned just then decisions, and I love Tony Robbins. I'm a big fan of him. And he always says, it's like people say it took them 5 years to change their life. It took them 2 years, took them 6 months or whatever. It's like, it took you 2 years to make a decision. It's like, it didn't take you 2 years to quit smoking or to get your health together. It took you 2 years to make a decision to get your health together. So I guess from, your experience and making those decisions to do X, Y, Z, and in that interim, or since then now, you said 2013, so 9 years ago now, you've brought to everything. I'm sure there's more to go. I'd love you to just maybe touch on how can someone make a decision, and what allows someone to make a decision that's actually long lasting rather than I'm going to go to the gym, they give up in 2 weeks. So how does someone make a decision to move their life forward and make sure they commit to it?
What a phenomenal question.
What a phenomenal guest. What a phenomenal story. That was, you had me every step of the way, man. That was beautiful. But yeah,
thank you.
Decisions, man. How can someone make one that's meaningful to them, that they stick to, and gives them the drive or motivation or whatever you want to call it to follow through on it?
I love this. For me, there's so many ways that I could dive down some rabbit holes, but for a lot of people, and I'm sure you would agree, it takes something significant in their life for them to actually make a decision. So whether they get cancer, whether they get sick, whether they have a breakup with their boyfriend or girlfriend, we see these revenge type things, whatever it is. There's so many ways that people make decisions. But for me, if someone's trying to interrupt and not have those kind of experiences, they just want to make a decision. They know they want something to change. For me, it would be like making a list of how typical this is, like making a list of pros and cons, making a list of the reasons why, the purpose behind why you want to make this decision and why you want to take this direction. If I can attest to the decisions that I made that decision I made after 2 years, it did take something significant. But in that moment, the purpose outweighed the work rate that I knew was at hand, that I knew was in front of me. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew and made the decision that day that it was going to happen. So for anyone out there that is wanting to make a long-term decision, I think creating or like checking in with yourself and asking yourself, what's the purpose? Why am I wanting to go in this direction? And if that why or purpose like tugs at your heart, you can literally feel it pulling you forward, and it excites the crap out of you. Like, I think that's what's going to be the kind of drawing the line in the sand for people.
Yeah.
And yeah, people might hear that and be like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, I hear this all the time. But have you actually gone out and done that? Have you actually made that list? Have you actually gone and asked yourself, what is the purpose and why do I want to do this? Like, take those steps and then come back and be like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Can I swear?
Yeah. Oh man.
Okay.
Fuck yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh man, I've had some interesting characters on my podcast. So
Awesome.
Keep going. If you're done with that, I've got more questions. But is there any more on that answer?
I think there's plenty more avenues that we could dive down, but that's probably my biggest piece on that. Just finding your purpose and your why as to why you're making this change and wanting to go in that direction. And that's been the line in the sand for me. And I know maybe anyone that relates to that, that's gonna be the line in the sand for you.
Something that, just to reiterate what you're saying, I remember I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and we caught up, and he's a very, I guess, successful person as people would perceive him. Yeah. And we caught up, went out and got some breakfast, and he's like, Louis, I'm like, how's life? How's things? He's like, honestly, mate, everything I start, I haven't finished. It's like, I'm lacking motivation. And I guess similar question or thought pattern, I was like, man, what's your purpose? Not just what's the purpose of what you're doing. What's your purpose? And he gave me some bullshit answer. He's like, it's to maximize and unleash the unlimited potential and maximize people's lives. I'm like, man, it sounds like you're just saying shit to impress people. And don't take that offensively. I love you and I'm trying to help you here. But tell me where that's come from.
Yeah.
He's like, It's like, because purpose comes from, I guess, your voids create what's important to you, right? It's what the pain you go through gives you the drive and the purpose that you have today.
Absolutely.
So I was like, where has, you've just shared an incredible story. I'm sure there's more pain in your life than just that, but obviously that's an incredible experience you've shared. But it's like, he couldn't answer it. I said, get clear on the purpose, but not just clear. Don't just say some fluffy shit. Don't write down the list. Where's it coming from? Where does that, because I'm sure if you ever have a moment of lack of motivation or you feel a little bit down, if you think back to that moment, I'm sure you don't need any fucking coffee or you just shoot up and whatever happens. So I guess to just underline what you're saying, guys, is get clear on what is it you want, why you want it, but not just why, like, where's it come from? Has it come from parents or lack thereof? Has it come from the abuse you've been through, the pain that you went through? And when you can get clear on where it's coming from, like practical moments it's come from, it just, I don't know, for me personally and from what you've said, you can't explain it. It's just, you don't need the motivational video to wake up. You spring out of bed to do what it is you're doing, right? So just want to underline that a little bit.
I love it.
I definitely want to go into, I guess, health mindset and I guess your beliefs around that. Before we go into that, you used something, you even used it, you said when you got kicked out of home at 15, had to literally live for yourself, look after yourself, and you said it was the best thing that's ever happened to you. And something that comes to mind is it's like when you can realize the crisis is a blessing, then it no longer holds you in a negative way. Like if you're judging or blaming parents' upbringing, blaming for getting kicked out of the house rather than saying it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So I guess I'd love to know your thinking or how you've been able, I don't know if you're like that at the time. Were you like grateful at the time? Like, fuck yeah, thanks for kicking me out? Or did it take you some processing to get to a point where you can say things like what you just said, where it was the best thing that's ever happened to me? How were you able to get to that point?
It's definitely a process. For me, anyway. Everyone's experience will be different. But for me, there was the process of grace and forgiveness. I definitely think if I can track back to that time, I remember it being so survival mode. And you don't have to be 15 to be experiencing this. People could be experiencing this right now, listening to this, and you're 35. Like, you might stop for a moment and ask yourself, like, am I in survival? Am I just fighting for my life right now? Like, what is it? Because I think people can live there for their entire lives sometimes. But I don't think I could have grace or forgiveness in that moment because I didn't have time to think about anything else but the roof over my head, when I was going to get my next meal, paying school fees, paying rent.
At 15 years old,
all that kind of stuff.
How the fuck did you do it? Like,
I mean, let's I could tell you this whole inspiring story. Like, I went and got a job and stuff, but you know, we live in an amazing country, and Centrelink really helped me out at the time. I had to apply to be my own guardian through Centrelink and all this kind of stuff. There was a whole process. So thank God for them, because if I had to go get a job and I had to work for my money at that time, maybe I wouldn't have gone to school because that would have pulled away from school. It was a blessing that I was given this so that all I could focus on was school, and I only had enough to survive. So as uninspiring as it might be, like, that was my way, and I had to operate in that way. I was 15 years old. It wasn't what I could do. But thank the Lord for that. Like, it honestly saved my life. So, that's how I did it financially. Mentally, I have no idea. Survival, like, it was just fight or flight for me.
Apologies for the background music, but we got a car going past. But keep going.
But yeah, so I think the original question was,
how do you process, or you can use that example of when you're 15 to whatever time, and you're like, best thing that ever happened to you. But maybe a bit of a framework of how do you process things now? Because I'm sure everyone has things that go wrong in their life. And it's like hindsight. How do you instead of it taking 2 years of your boyfriend leaving you, do you realize that was a blessing, it was a lesson? Like we were speaking before we jumped on the podcast of a big challenge I've been through which happened 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was so angry. I blamed. There was so much negative energy coming from me because I didn't see the blessing. I didn't see the lesson. I didn't see how it was shaping me to be the man that deserves the things that I want. So how do you process that? Because you've had some, and everyone's got their own journey, of course, but you've been through some challenging things.
Yeah.
And to even say that example of when you're 15, it was the best thing that's ever happened to you. There has to be some way that you get to that point, and I'd love to know what that is, because then maybe our listeners can do the same thing.
Yeah, great. I think there was a few things that brought me to that point. Like, I think I was in survival, operating on survival and fight or flight for a long time. And I got to the point, I'm going to just stray a tiny bit. I got to the point where my body actually decided that the only process it was going to prioritize was keep me awake. And this was like well into my journey. I was like 23 at the time, I think, 24. And I'm 26 now. And it's like, when your body gets to that point and doesn't even prioritize digesting your food, I was like, great, something needs to shift.
Bit of feedback, right?
Bit of feedback, yeah. And but the framework for me, I guess, was having those wake up calls is really important, and your body's going to do it to you, and it's great. So if you're aware and able to look out for it, then like be super grateful, because like not a lot of people are aware enough to actually see it. And so the framework, I guess, and I've got a long way to go, but the framework was having those, for me, it was having those really, really tough conversations with people and myself. I actually haven't done work with a coach around this in particular. I haven't done a lot of work in the personal space. For me, it's the reason I suppose it's taken me 10 years almost to get to where I am right now is because it's definitely been a lot I've learned along the way. So if I can offer any advice to anyone that's wanting to make those shifts, it would be, one, be super patient with yourself. Like, be patient, not like lazy, just be patient, and have those seriously tough conversations with yourself.
How do you have a tough conversation?
Oh,
whether it's with yourself or with someone else, like maybe it's a father figure or a mother figure or an ex-partner or a current partner, might be a business partner. How does one have a tough conversation with themselves, a look in the mirror and whatever that sounds like? And how does one have one with someone who maybe there's a bit of healing that needs to happen?
Great question. The conversations that I've had, I've set a premise, I've given them a subject, I've given them a topic. For me, I kind of go around it more rigid than maybe some people would, I guess. But for me and my dad in particular, like, we had to definitely heal some relationship issues for us. And it was two things. It was time for both of us. And then it was leaving space for both of us to have an opinion.
Great point.
Great point. I think people are very inward when they're in those situations, and to just stop for a moment, to have grace and to have awareness around how you're feeling, but also the ability to be patient with that person so they can speak about their feelings. That was how I've gone about it. It's like, I could say all these things to my dad at this moment, but he's a human too, and he feels things, and he had his own experience. So being patient enough and having the grace and forgiveness for yourself, and then pouring it onto others, unlimited. Like, there shouldn't be a cap on your grace and forgiveness. So for me, that's how I've had some of the tougher conversations, and that's flowed from devastating events in my life that I haven't dealt with in the right way. So through my pain has come a whole heap of purpose. And if my true purpose, or you're listening to this and your purpose is people, you're in the people business or you're in a relationship, then those kinds of things need to be unlimited. There needs to not be a cap on that.
Powerful shit, man. We haven't even touched on health, and that's what you do. We haven't even got there yet. Man, beautiful stuff. Man, this is long overdue, by the way.
It is.
Let's go. Health is where I want to go with you.
Okay.
I guess, what are your beliefs around health? Because you've been in the industry for a long time now. You've obviously had a lot of experience with your own health journey, and you've worked with so many clients now over the years. And you've got, I guess, from seeing you from a distance, it seems like you're starting to incorporate like different modalities and different ways of thinking and believing and incorporating health, from the ice baths to the saunas to the meditation to the calisthenics to the jiu-jitsu, and I'm sure there's more in there that I haven't mentioned. So, what are your general beliefs around health? Like, what does health mean to you? What are your beliefs when it comes to health?
So we've definitely dived down more. It was a lot of imitation in the beginning for us. Like, we were just trying to fit in.
Yeah.
And for us, health has become more holistic, which I guess is a very loaded word nowadays. Yeah. And but health for me is long term, not short term.
Yeah.
So when we sit down with a client, it's 6 to 12 months is the beginning, you know? And what we've introduced into our business is like, we have a 1 to 7 experience no matter where you are in the building. And
1 to 7?
And that's the most. Yeah. So one coach or one person to 7 people.
Cool. Yeah.
And that's the kind of experience that we wanted to create. So when we were looking at transformation, we were looking at on a long-term scale, and we wanted to work with people for the long term. So I guess my perspective around health is that it's not a short game. And yes, my body decided that it was going to just prioritize staying awake. And it's not like in that moment I was like healed when I decided that I wanted to change. It's been a 3-year process going through different modalities, seeing naturopaths and nutritionists. And so I think, one, it's individual. Like, I think people have their own journey when it comes to their health, and we need to not fit people into a box. And that it's a long-term transformation as opposed to the short game.
What are the pillars of the health? So say, if I come to you, I'm said, sign me up, Zen. I'm struggling, I'm burnt out, I'm not healthy, I'm not doing it sustainably, mentally and physically.
Yeah.
What are like maybe the main areas that you work on, or the main maybe, I don't know, pillars is the word that comes to mind, but I guess the main beliefs or strategies or things that you do that you want to incorporate to someone to help them with their health, generally speaking. You can go detailed as well if you want to, but yeah, how would you work with someone who wants to start to look after their health?
For me, it's nutrition, mindset, and movement. Has to be those 3 things. I think nutrition is overlooked for a lot of people, but it's also, I think people overcomplicate it a lot as well. So it's not like being on this strict regime. The way we help people is we educate them about food as opposed to being strict. So we educate them on the right foods for them, the individual. When it comes to movement, it's like movement resembles so many things in their lives. When they start moving their bodies in the way they do, like you've experienced, we don't have a lot of weights in the gym.
Yeah.
So for us, it's still that body weight experience. Like, we love it.
I have written down body weight training because I know it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I know it can be overlooked.
Yeah.
It's like you got to go to the gym and fucking lift heavy weights and stuff to look after your training. And even another angle, some people I'm still guilty of this to this day, to be honest, is sometimes I get caught up with I have to like kill myself every session to have a good workout rather than just go in and move my body and just keep the maintenance going on. So could you go a little bit more into the movement and maybe your beliefs around it, and maybe challenge people's beliefs around what movement can look like to be healthy? There's obviously so many ways to do it, but I guess your beliefs around that.
This is cool. I've actually had an experience recently where I've signed up to this program with my chiropractor, and I see him once a week, and he's just he's delivered so many different perspectives, and maybe this will shift for others too. But it's, if we look at the body and we look at the culture that we have in movement on the Gold Coast or in the world even still, and we look at the big jacked up guys, it's amazing. Like what they do is so impressive. But we look at the examples that we have of fitness and of movement nowadays, and a lot of people try to aspire to be that. And if we look at the body and physiology, if we look at a stiff human, like only works in the up and down and side to side, and that's it, right? They have this plane of movement that is very rigid, and they're quite stiff. Yeah. Like you see them, they are stiff in the way they carry themselves and all that kind of thing. And if you look at 100 years ago, 200 years ago, someone that was that way, or probably a bit further, more like, further than that. If you went to war, right? More back when we didn't have the guns and stuff like that. If you look at war and someone had to handle a sword, if you were rigid, not flexible, couldn't move your body, you're actually seen as dead. That's a human that is dead inside, or it's dead because the moment they go to battle, they're going to die. Yeah. They don't have flexibility, they don't have movement, they can't survive or move for long periods of time. So that person was deemed dead. And he challenged me. He said what life looks like for him and the way that he helps me and other clients that he works with, and how I help people and have been for a very long time, just didn't realize I put purpose to it like this, is that imagine our bones and muscles being like wobbly. Imagine our bones actually being flexible, not just like up and down and that's it. So it's not that they will literally be like spaghetti. It's more about moving your body in that way. Yeah. So for us, doing all the bodyweight movement is so important, and it's just given it so much more purpose. And for me, that broke some barriers, some myths.
Awesome.
For me in fitness. So
what can someone do? Like obviously, you've got your studio on the Gold Coast in Burleigh Heads. Yeah. If someone can't come to your studio, is there content online just so someone can, because I picture like your style of training, zoo style of training, calisthenics style of training for people. So if someone's just listening to this, just so they can have a bit of a visual, is there any like people or videos or things they can search online to have a better idea? Or it will obviously reference your stuff at the end.
Yeah.
Where can someone just get a bit of a visual idea of what you're referring to?
It's a great question. You should probably go check out, there's a guy called Nathan Hellberg.
Machine.
Like off the chain. I did a course with him
recently, right?
Recently, a couple of weeks ago, and it was 10 hours straight of movement.
Fuck.
Don't recommend. It's not for everybody. But you know, he's in his late 40s, maybe 50s.
He's a machine. I get goosebumps, man.
He led the entire day. Yeah. It was crazy from the front, and it was just impressive to watch him move. And for me, just being like a puddle on the ground. He's carrying me, like he's picking me back up. I'm like, what are you doing?
I come from PBC, the school I went to, and we had a lot of zoo training, which is what Nathan's the founder of, I believe. And I remember like, because you'd have the weights component, but Zimo, our trainer, he was a zoo trainer, and like he was just like, my first session, I was like, what the fuck are we doing? And like, man, fucked. It's like the froggies, the scorpions, the XYZ, like it was fucking brutal, man. So, and people just underestimate it. They think you gotta have a barbell with 100 kilos on it to do a heavy train, to train hard. It's like, no, you don't. No, you fucking don't.
And I think there's a balance between both, for sure. 100%. You've got to do it. But that style of movement is crazy. He now calls it the world's hardest bodyweight training.
That's cool.
And he shied away from it for a long time, and so did everyone that followed him. So for us, it was something we shied away from for a long time. I was like, truly, it's not going to be for everybody. You know, there is a way for every single person to move. So I know that there's some people out there that are so loud in the industry, and that's amazing because you're impacting people. You're getting people to move, work on their fitness and their health, which is so important, and people's first touch with personal development for the most part. However, like, you got to find what's right for you and the way that you move.
Powerful, man.
Yeah.
You before we started this, I was just asking kind of like what you would like to talk about, what's going on in your life, and
Yeah.
I'd love to dive into it a little bit more. And even from your story, it's starting to connect dots for me, anyways. But this is my belief, anyways, and you can challenge me on it. But like when a lot of people start their journey, their hustle journey, their business journey, or whatever it is generally it is out of a belief or mentality of scarcity or stress, fight or survive, having to prove themselves, and it's very like a tense energy. And for me, felt guilty for not working, hustle 16-hour days, live off 4 hours sleep, never have time to myself, and just work.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if it's an epiphany or the universe gives you some feedback to wake you the fuck up or to slow you down, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's now I am so much more relaxed and present. I still got fires that I'm putting out, as we were speaking about before the podcast. Like I've still got fires, I've still got challenges, I'm still hustling and doing what I love and following my purpose, but I do it more out of a peaceful state or more of a present state. I guess I'd love to know your version of that, because literally you were saying you were like from 15 to 18-ish, and it was like fight or flight. It was like stress, and maybe went for a bit longer than that, but you said it before we started, you incorporated a bit more jiu-jitsu, a bit more presence. I know you've got a beautiful relationship with Beth. It's how have you transitioned? Have you experienced something similar first of all? And yeah, just maybe your thoughts and beliefs around doing it more from a place of presence rather than stress, not good enough, hustle, got to work, can't switch off type of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I did that for a long time as well. Cool. That was the breakdown in my body. Yeah. Was when it decided to tell me that was enough. Which I'm grateful for. So, yeah, I'm on that train 100%. The fact, how I look at it now is like a light switch where hustle doesn't have to be, I was told, like I watched all the YouTube videos that you probably looked up when you're, 18 and onwards, and it's like
motivational shit on YouTube.
It's
videos.
Like,
what do you want to be remembered for? Wake up, get into it. Oh.
Yeah, I'd be in my job. I used to be a hire car assistant, so I would show everyone to their cars, and I'd count 400 number plates every morning at 6:30 in the morning, no matter what. And I would have the back of the van up that I drove there, and just be blasting like
Man,
these
I used to do this
motivational things
every morning. I just in the car have some YouTube one. I'll send it to the group and be like, "This is epic. Get into it." So.
Yeah, it's like my dreams wake me up. It was 3 hours of sleep or whatever it is, and it's like I get it. But if that can be a switch that we can turn on and off, then great. Like, I think that needs to be more the purpose. It's not about, like, I don't implore people to be lazy. Like, don't sink back and shrink into greatness. Definitely stretch into greatness. Definitely stretch into greatness. But have hustle be a switch you can turn on and off. And that changed the game for me. And when I have to be on, and it's all hands on deck,
it's on,
and it's on, like the fire is burning hot. And when I turn it off, it's not that I don't talk about business, or I don't communicate with clients, or I sit in bed and watch Netflix all day, which is a great thing.
We're watching Suits. Have you seen Suits?
I've seen Suits. I've watched it like twice.
My partner my old friend tried to get me into Ages, and that was in that, no, I'm not watching Netflix, I got to work thing, and finally got onto it. Me and my partner loving it, man, loving it. But
it's so good.
Keep going.
I love it. But yeah, that's for me. Like, it's that typical. I suppose there's a purpose in the beginning of business where that hustle switch might be on for 2-3 years straight. Okay, that's totally fine. But you will realize at some point that coming from a place of presence or peace, you make such better decisions. So imagine making a business decision but turning that hustle switch off for a moment and making a decision from that place at times. Like, it's okay to step into the feminine, and it's okay to step, like the masculine, just this hustle turn on all the time. But like, to actually take a step back for a moment and start making business decisions from that place as well. That's where the care, the nurture comes into play. And to be honest, when my hustle switch was on, nurturing and caring for people wasn't my highest priority.
You're giving me goosebumps, man. I'm like, I just resonate, and not just me, like people that I know very, very well, and just like, being able to just incorporate a bit more feminine energy into the decision making rather than being so fucking rigid, step up or step the fuck out. This is how we're doing it, and burning bridges and burning the candle at both ends rather than actually coming from a place of, I think you said, presence and peace and detachment from it.
Mm.
It's not lazy. And I love that you said that. It's not like sit back and do nothing, but you're doing it with a different intention, a different energy about you. So
Yeah.
it's phenomenal, man. But yeah, keep going. I'm loving what you're saying.
Yeah. And that's what changed the game for my business. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way purely because I didn't turn the hustle switch off. You know, you mentioned Tony Robbins before, and we actually attended Tony Robbins. That was the conference that I went to.
We went
we went together.
Fucking hell. That's a memory I couldn't remember.
When? 2018?
Yeah.
2019?
18, 19, give or
18,
take.
19.
Fucking hell, man.
I went with you guys. I went with the PLC team, and that was my first big 4-day like transformation event. And I was we were 21.
Yeah, man. I'm like reflecting. Jess was there, McMaster. Josh was there.
It was
fucking hell.
wild.
What a memory. What a memory.
Yeah. And I remember walking into the room, we just split.
Yeah.
We were just like, we're going.
See ya.
That was great. And that was a crazy experience. But I came out, I went in so empty, just being like, fill me. Like, whatever you want to give to me in these 4 days, I'm in.
Yeah.
And I remember walking out there being like, I'm gonna be Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
And it was the shittiest decision I ever made in my entire life.
Yeah.
That day was to be someone who I was not.
Yeah.
And for 2 years, that hustle switch was on, and the nurture side of my business was out the window. And I suffered greatly for making that decision. And when my body decided to tell me that it was enough, and that nurture switch turned back on for me, it turned back on for everybody else. And ever since, we introduced the word transformation into our business. And as much as that's a loaded word as well, for us, it's that 1 to 7, it's that nurture experience, it's that attention that they require over a 6 to 12 month experience. And people invest more with us than usual. Like we work with people on a higher capacity, but we work in that person's life. It's like all areas. We have the time to feed them and nurture them, and give them the space to really launch. And it ends up not just being in their fitness and health. It ends up flowing into so many other areas of their life: relationship, business, jobs. People can still have careers and jobs. That's okay too. And leveling people up in those areas too has been, man, it's been wild. It's been amazing.
Just the way you speak, man, you can say you can feel it's authentic. You can feel that it's real, and you love what you do. Just for time, man, I think we're gonna have to do round 2, man. Like I want to speak about relationships. I want to speak about. But there's a lot more mindset that I'd like to go in with you, because I know that's a big component of who you are. But man, we'll just have to do take 2. But man, I guess for now, for people that are listening that want to connect with you, reach out to you, indulge in your content and who you are, where's the best way people can find you? And obviously, if they're on the Gold Coast, they've got access to your facilities as well. Where can they find you?
Best place to find me is Coach Zen. I'm assuming you won't find many others. Coach Zen on Instagram.
And I haven't even touched it. Just the fact your name is Zen. Just like peace and presence, everything we're talking about. So.
Yeah.
Anyways, keep going.
Maybe that's why I struggled so much. I wasn't aligned with my name. Coach Zen on Instagram. Body HQ if you're looking for that kind of, for that side of me. Otherwise, bodyheadquarters.com also. So
powerful, man. Listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Zen, thank you for being here, man. This has been fucking powerful. I got goosebumps. I got teary. I'm going to have tissues in this fucking this room next time, because, man, I was trying to bring it back, man. But beautiful story, beautiful person, beautiful soul. You're touching so many people. You're going to touch so many people. I'm sure you believe you're just warming up to. Like you're learning, you're failing, you're taking action, you're investing into yourself. You're going to change the world, man. You already are. So thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Lewis.